newspaper article from the Daily Alta California, volume 27, number 9341, October 31st, 1875. The latest sensation, a veritable sea serpent in San Francisco Bay. Our Oakland correspondent is responsible for the following rapid startling account. It has had it in view for a week or two past. The names of the gentlemen interviewed are well known, and altogether it is a story not to be laughed away. We are not at this time tempted of the devil to write of this scriptural symbol, but because we have had a recent conviction that it is not all a myth, the sailor's yarn of a sea serpent. With our own eyes, we have not seen this huge leviathan of the deep, which many are disposed to believe is, quote, all in the eye, unquote. But the source of our information of the subject in hand are so reliable that, for one, we are inclined to the opinion that the sea serpent is a reality. If the reader will follow us to the end of our narration and not be induced to coincide with our expressed view, he or she must at least be impressed with the conviction that, if nothing more, a worm-like bonanza in one snake ship exists in the waters of San Francisco Bay. A few nights since, while crossing the bay, Colonel J.W. Wood, a ticket taker at Long Wharf, the smallest man on the job, and by the way, a man whose ways are ways of pleasantness, and who is especially known to the thousands of ferry passengers as one that can always be found today where he was yesterday, and is likely to be tomorrow. For during these many years, Colonel Wood has stood sentinel and punched tickets at the gate of Long Wharf Corral, and won for himself an envious name for extreme modesty, careful reliability, and general trustworthiness. Inquired of us whether we had that day seen Dinsmore. We knew he had reference to William G. Dinsmore, the Broadway drugstore man who has especially achieved a valuable notoriety as a dealer in an extra choice brand of Mozart cigars. And we said, no, why? I'll tell you, said the colonel. And we and the colonel talked as follows. Colonel, Dinsmore saw today what I am satisfied I have seen on two different occasions. Within the past 12 months, a snake, a huge serpent, and no mistake. But I want you to see Dinsmore before making any public use of this. We, certainly, but tell us more. Where was it seen and all about it? Colonel, it was from the 9:30 a.m. train from Broadway Station while coming along Long Beach that Dinsmore saw it. Off to the right from the old boat landing, about midway of the bridge. But I don't want you to use this information until you see Dinsmore. Really, do you believe the sea serpent to be a reality? This question was put because we know the colonel belonged to a family that is well versed in zoological matters. We knew his big brother, who formerly owned and became famous as the owner of Woods Museum at Chicago. In fact, we have great faith in the colonel's knowledge of petrified things, as well as the animated curiosities of the animal kingdom, including almost every creeping thing upon the face of the earth and in the waters under the earth. The colonel is still a part owner of the Cardiff Giant and used to show it in his palmy days. Colonel, my education has inclined me to disbelieve, but since I have seen and heard recent reports and descriptions of these submarine monsters being seen in other waters, I have made up my mind that I have seen right here in our own bay either a sea serpent or what is it? I have always heretofore refrained from speaking about this thing because of the incredulous belief of the public in the existence of some such animals, and through a fear that the boys might pick it up, and I call it one of Wood's fish stories. You understand? Where and when did you see the sight? And what was the appearance of the worm? Colonel, it was about 12 months ago this summer, quite early in the morning, between 5 and 6 o'clock, that I first saw this remarkable snake. It was about 1/3 of a mile north from the center of Long Bridge, and appeared to be sporting in the water, which it agitated violently and lashed into a foam. Its numerous huge coils, as seen above the water, might have been taken for a scrambling group of seals of the quote General Grant Ben Butler unquote type of the cliffhouse notoriety. And that's what I thought at the time, and why I said not a word. But after a later and more distinct observation, and in view of what I have since heard, I am satisfied that my first spectacle was of a unity in one snakeship of monstrous dimensions. My second and dual view was last month, also quite early in the morning, whilst I was coming out to Long Wharf on the earliest morning train. It was in about the same line of observation as my first view, but not more than half so away. I had a good and satisfactory view when the monster dove underwater and disappeared from sight. It stood as erect from the water as one of the piles in the slip, and in uniformity of its diameter, I would judge it to a measure to be from 14 to 16 inches. Its height above the surface of the water was 10 to 15 feet. The head resembled that of a lizard or bullfrog and was dazzling black, while the throat was pure white. From the head, just above a lizard-shaped mouth, protruded an inch or more a pair of deep black eyes, half as large as ordinary saucers. The body, or so much as I saw, was striped in harmonious shades of black and brown on the back and sides, the stripes running lengthwise, while the belly was almost white. Running down the entire center of the back was plain to be seen a sort of fin-like ruffle about 4 inches in width, as though the cutlets of the animal had been drawn tightly over the belly and side and pinched back after the fashion of the day. We must admit your description is curiously interesting, but your resuscitation, Colonel, reminds us of that familiar apple story in which Eve is represented to have been seduced by the devil under the form of a serpent. You say you saw the sea serpent, or what is it, stand up like a pile in a perfectly erect attitude. And since Milton tells us in his Paradise Lost that the serpent, before the temptation and the fall, moved about in perfectly upright position, we would like to ask you if it is your opinion that the serpent you saw was standing erect upon its feet like a sober man. This question is asked in order to arrive at the length of the serpent. For the time and place you saw it, the water was at full tide and would have measured in its locality about 25 feet. Colonel, I want you to see Dinsmore before this thing goes any further. I will say, however, that I believe Milton was a little off, for an erect mode of progression is utterly incompatible with the structure of a serpent, whose motion is affected by the mechanism of the vertebral column and the multitudinous ribs, which, like so many pairs of levers, enables it to move its body from place to place. Consequently, had the snakes before the fall moved in an erect attitude, they must have been formed on a different plan altogether. But since the fossil serpents hitherto found differ in no essential respect from modern representatives of the order, I must conclude that either Milton greatly erred or that his printer was drunk. No, sir, I don't believe the serpent I saw was standing erect, upon its feet, but that it was wrapped in many coils beneath the surface of the water and would probably measure 100 feet. But you see, James, we interrupted the colonel at this juncture, cordially and heartfully expressing our sincere thanks for the time and information he gave us. And on yesterday afternoon, called upon William C. Dinsmore at his drugstore, number 1059 Broadway. We informed our friend Dinsmore that we had understood he had on the previous day seen a sea serpent, and that we wanted the particulars for an item. Whereupon he volunteered a description of the animal he had seen, and expressed himself as being satisfied that it was nothing less than a real live sea serpent, or whatever else such a mammoth specimen of the snake species is called. It is but fair to say that Mr. Dinsmore is one of our pioneers and a most reputable citizen, a 49er, and a man who, when he talks, knows what he is talking about, and he doesn't talk much for fun. His description of the serpent was essentially the same as that given by Colonel Wood, who we afterward informed Mr. Dinsmore had first given us the item. The plain view of the serpent that Mr. Dinsmore had was while it was swimming along with the rapidity of a steam tug near the old ferry landing or long bridge. Its head was raised about 4 feet out of the water, and at intervals it could be seen a curvature in its huge body at a distance not less than 25 or 30 feet from its head. After Mr. D's description, we informed him that Colonel Wood had his own reasons for wishing his name not to appear before the public in this connection. Now, we didn't much like to deal with this hitherto somewhat fabulous subject without being permitted the free use of names of reference of responsible and prominent citizens as a sort of guarantee for the truth of our report. Mr. D saw at once the justness and consistency of our request and requested and consented to the free use of his name, and also referred us to Judge Shearer, who he said had seen the serpent as he had seen it. We then bade him a thankful adieu and called upon Judge Shearer, father of Louis Shearer, the Republican candidate for 3rd District Judge at the last election. We found the judge in his law office over the Union National Gold Bank and promptly introduced ourselves and announced the object of our errand. This venerable-looking man, whose hair is turned white, slowly took off his spectacles, and after carefully wiping, he placed them upon the bridge of his nose and looked us squarely in the face. He said, quote, "Young man, I am getting quite old, and my eyes are growing somewhat dim, in all of which I plainly see the paused hand of time beckoning me to not loiter by life's wayside to indulge in idle talk or sensational stories. As a matter of fact, I have neither the inclination nor the time to do that," unquote. But with regard to the sea serpent seen by Mr. Dinsmore and myself and other gentlemen, there can be no question of mistake, young man. The judge then proceeded with his description of the serpent, but as it was substantially the same as those given above, we will not repeat. There was a truth to this matter. Leave the reader to do his or her own speculating on the monstrous worm that we believe lives and moves and has its being in the waters of San Francisco Bay.